Soul Simmers, and welcome back to a brand new speed build. This is yet another build for the Builders game, so let me do a quick introduction of the Builders games just in case anyone watching this has never heard of it. The Builders games is a Simmers competition or building competition hosted by Simmers for Simmers. Every season they host has a different theme, and this is currently season 6, and the theme of this season is desserts. I also participated in season 5, and there the theme was World Tour, where we had to build from different locations around the world. But this season is basically a little bit of a smaller season. It's a kind of summer in between season, so it's a bit smaller than any of the other seasons you might have seen. But that was really nice because that made the challenges actually doable within a week, which I very much appreciated because the previous season, as an ambitious builder that I am, almost took me out because it was definitely a challenge, but this one was way more doable. So it was only 4 weeks, and every week we get a different challenge, like a little shell or a little prompt that we have to work with, and we have to work on that for a week. We have to submit the builds, and then there is a judge, which are usually also Simmers, and then the judges or the jury will actually decide who will win that week's challenge. On the previous season, there were also eliminations, which basically meant that every week someone would go home. On this smaller season, there were no eliminations, which I think was really nice because it kind of took off the pressure. But since there was still scoring, I still felt incredibly motivated to work on this build and put on my best effort. At the same time, it didn't feel like there was this impending doom of, oh, you might actually have to go home. If you're curious what I've done for week 1 to 3, I have already posted all the speed builds on my channel, and I also have a playlist with all of my Sims builds. So if you're ever curious about any of the speed builds from the previous season, or just in general, any of the building challenges that I do love to build in The Sims, so feel free to go check it out. And now let me actually talk about what you're seeing on this build, because it is definitely coming together a little bit already. And I can imagine that if you're seeing this, you're like, what even is going on? So let me actually tell you what we're working with here. So for week 4, which is, by the way, the final challenge for this season, so it was a big challenge. The theme was, or the idea was, that we had to transform this shell, which was a dollhouse shell challenge, into a build that was inspired by either of 4 desserts. So we could pick which one we wanted to do. We could pick between a lemon meringue pie, a black forest cake, tiramisu, and a strawberry shortcake. I picked the lemon meringue because it's by far my favorite out of that list. I actually have a little story of when I remembered for the first time eating lemon meringue pie. It took me almost embarrassingly long to, for the first time, eat a lemon meringue pie in my life. But I was working at a Jamie Oliver, a Jamie's Italian restaurant, way back when. It was one of my jobs while I was still in uni, and I was working as a hostess. But this restaurant actually opened. It was the very first Jamie Oliver restaurant in the Netherlands, and they had a whole training for everyone who joined the official first crew. So it was I would say maybe 80 to 100 of us, waiters and chefs and hosts and all of those things. And we were all getting a training of 5 days where we were basically tasting all of the desserts. We were tasting all of the main courses. We had to learn about the menu, about the ingredients, about Jamie's culture, basically. So there was this whole intense 5 training days, which was, by the way, extremely cool to be able to join. I had a grand time. That was my first introduction to hospitality and restaurant work in general. I don't think I could ever work in hospitality again, but that was the first time that I tasted lemon meringue pie. It was one of the desserts on our menu, and I had never had it. And also in my brain, meringue was one of those things that was crispy, and I didn't know there was a fluffy variant that was just really sweet. And it was, oh my God, the first time I tasted it, I was instantly obsessed. Ever since, lemon meringue pie has been one of my favorite pies by far. So when I saw it on this list, I was like, of course I'm gonna pick this pie. There's no question in my mind that this is the pie that I have to go for, because to be quite frank, I don't like a strawberry shortcake. Tiramisu very often has almond or almond liqueur in it, which I also don't like. So I do like just a regular chocolate tiramisu. That's pretty good, but most tiramisus I don't like. And then a black forest cake is fine. I like it. It's not one that I'll turn away if someone has it, but I will definitely pick a lemon meringue pie over any of the other ones any day. So basically that was my starting point. I had a dollhouse shell and I had a vision for a pie. Then there was something in the challenge description that said your end goal is to transform the shell into a space that captures the essence of your chosen dessert. Use your creativity to bring flavors, colors, and textures of these delightful desserts to life in miniature form. Have fun with it, and we can't wait to see your sweet and inspired designs. And something about this statement really stood out to me because they specifically mentioned textures. And textures, I think if you're gonna try to convey that in a build, almost immediately becomes relatively meta. Like you really have to think about what does this cake texture represent and how do I translate that into The Sims? So it becomes quite creative, a little bit more artistic, but I was really intrigued by that because I almost never do builds that are really out there. I almost always try to stick with a build that's like somewhat realistic, that you could play in, that is functional. So I was kind of like, what if I just go ham and I take the texture as my starting point? So I built this as all of the other builds on my Twitch stream, and I asked my Twitch chat, I was like, let me ask you, what is the first word that comes to mind if I say lemon meringue pie? And almost everyone said either fluffy, airy, or light. And those were exactly the words that I had in my brain. So I think we were all on the same page that this build needed to represent something that was fluffy, airy, and light. That very quickly in my brain translated to something that was floating. I was like, what will look more light and airy than something that is quite literally floating in the air? So that was the starting point. And then obviously I had to figure out what else to do with the build. So we were thinking about color scheme, and that was actually a pretty easy one because obviously the lemon meringue pie has a very nice color scheme of the white meringue on the top, then the yellow pie itself, and then of course for the crust you have the kind of like lighter beige usually. So I was thinking with all of these colors, it was very much giving spring vibes to me. I don't know why, but these colors just really speak to me. They were like fresh, and it just made sense for that to be spring. And then in my brain, I might have again been reading a little bit too much ACOTAR or fantasy in general, but I immediately went to, if it's magical, if it's floating, if it's spring, it has to be spring court vibes. And then we kind of went from there, and we started thinking of designs like Rivendell from Lord of the Rings, and just all of these kind of like ethereal builds for fairies, like very light, very like beautiful. I don't know. I'm hoping you get my vision. I'm hoping that I'm kind of getting across the vibe. When I was talking about this on my Twitch stream, everyone was like, yes, we see the vision. We see where you're going with this. So that's what I had in my mind. But then my first vision was to actually make a castle that was so high up that it was basically, if you were looking at it in the game, you wouldn't see anything on the lot. The lot would like seem empty, and then the castle would be way, 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 way up high. That was what I wanted to start with, and I actually started with that, but it didn't really work. For some reason, I didn't get it to work. I wasn't able to figure it out. Then we were like, let's bring the build down and like place it on the floor, and let's see what happens if we like place the clouds around it and we kind of pretend that the floor isn't there. And that looked a bit better, but it still wasn't really perfect. So that's where like the challenge began of figuring out how to make something in The Sims that is floating but also works. And that is, I think, a very nice bridge into the challenges that came with this build. So this build, I think, is the most challenging one I have ever done. And I have done about 3,500 hours of building in this game, and I have never felt this close to quitting. This build really, really, really challenged my patience, but it was also a really good learning experience. I learned a lot about tool. I learned a lot about some game mechanics. So it was definitely worthy challenge for the finals of the Builders games. So I think the most important challenge was figuring out that floating design. I already mentioned it like a little bit ago that we went through many versions. We first started with the one that was a bit floating, then we started with one that was very high up, then there was one where we tried to place it at the top of a mountain. I wasted an entire hour with like making a fake mountain where the house would be floating at the peak of the mountain. And then after like an hour of mountain building, and we looked at it and we all agreed that it didn't look good. We even cut it out of the speed build because it just took forever and we didn't even use a single bit of it. But I feel like that is something that definitely is a lesson learned for me from the Builders games, is that you also sometimes just need to give your build time. You need to allow yourself to go through multiple iterations, to try things, to not be afraid to just completely bulldoze something or delete it, every single time we started over, we basically moved what we had to a new lot so that there was always a way for us to go back to the previous version. And I think that really helped in like reducing the stress of being like, I don't have enough time, how am I going to do this? But at the same time, allowing myself the space to really experiment and kind of figure out what would work best for this build. I think in the end, what we settled on is basically what you see over here, and that is like a build that is half floating. So it is quite high up, but it isn't like all the way in the sky, and it also isn't on the floor. And I think the thing that really sold it, that really made the difference on making this feel like an ethereal, magical floating design was the spiral stairs. Those spiral stairs actually didn't even take me that long to make. I think I spent about 30 minutes placing every single block. I used a lot of tool for it. For anyone who's wondering, the steps are actually sized up versions of the spa day hopping tile that you can place on water. I don't know what it's called actually, but it came with spa day, and you can usually place it on your fountains or on your pools for your Sims to kind of like basically walk over the water like little hopping stones or stepping stones. And I sized them up. I think I sized them up like 1.5 or 2 times. And then I basically just used tool to lower them each a little bit every step of the way. And then I rotated them to make this spiraling design. And I think that really, as soon as I did it, I felt like the build all of a sudden just made sense. Then also another thing that I really wanted to do from the beginning on was having those clouds that you saw me place earlier. And I think this was a really good move of using these because it really does give that fluffy, airy design to it. But it was quite hard to figure out where to place them because they are the ceiling lights, like the kids' ceiling lights. And obviously they have a cord that they're hanging from the ceiling normally. So I sized them up, but that also made that cord like ginormous. So I had to figure out like corners or places in the build where I could basically place those clouds so that that cord didn't show. That's also why I ended up kind of adding a gate at the top of the curved stairs, because I really wanted to have clouds there, but it just had this cord sticking out of nowhere. And then I ended up placing the gate and decorate it with a bunch of lemons and stuff to kind of hide it. So some things in this build also seem to be almost like features of the build, but they actually were born from a place of I need to hide other things, which again, I think is very typical for The Sims, that you have to figure those things out. But it was kind of funny that so many things in the build ended up being because I needed to hide something else. Then something that was very frustrating in this build was hand placing all the lemons. You saw me do that earlier, but that was such a pain in the ass. I'm not gonna lie, that almost made me completely rage quit my game. I was at a point during stream where I literally told chat, I am so about to be done with this build. Like, I'm about to close my game and start playing another game on stream, which happens almost never, because I love The Sims and I am very patient with The Sims. But this was one of the most frustrating processes ever because this build is floating, and every single time we moved the lemon slightly out of the way, what happened was that it would snap back to the ground floor, or just like the floor or the ground basically. And then every single time I would have to raise it all the way up with 9, and then it wouldn't go high enough, and then I tried to tool it, and all in all, that took us like a solid hour on stream of just placing lemons. So everyone who sat through that, everyone who was there on stream and who was patient with me being hella frustrated over lemons, thank you. You guys are really awesome. But I'm still really glad we did it, because I think in the end, it did really sell, again, that lemon pie vibe of this build. Then another thing, what you already kind of see me do here is I realized eventually, this was actually on the last stream, so I had 3 streams to build this, and after 2 streams I hadn't done any interior decoration, and I still felt that the build wasn't ready for it. I was like, something's missing. I couldn't put my finger on it. And then right before going into the 3rd stream, I looked at my build, I opened the game, and I was like preparing for stream, and I was like, I think it's the landscaping. I think if I'm not gonna landscape this lot, everything will feel empty. Like, no matter what I do, this build will feel empty. Even if the castle itself is beautifully decorated and I hand place like 5 million more lemons, it's not gonna be sold unless I decorate the ground as well. So that's when I started realizing how big this project was, because I had only 1 stream left and I still had to decorate the entire lot and the entire inside. But I think had I not done the landscaping, I would have not made the build look as good as it eventually does, because it really helps sell the entire spring vibe and the entire like magical vibe that I was going for. So I am extremely glad that I took the time to actually do this. Then decorating the dollhouse shell was also quite a big challenge because I've never done a dollhouse, or maybe one time before, but I don't remember that so clearly. And that was also, I don't think it was like a very creative out there build. So it was just more like a normal dollhouse, but it poses a very unique challenge if you have half of the build just being completely open. Like, that really makes it difficult to place your furniture and figure out a floor plan, because where are you going to place your bathroom? Because you couldn't really create any rooms, or at least not with the floor plan or the layout that I went for. So I was like, where does one place a toilet if there is no closed off rooms? I just settled for no toilet eventually. There is a bathtub with a beautiful view. If you sit in it, I would love to sit in and take a bath in this build because it is absolutely stunning. But yeah, there's basically no place that you can actually go to the toilet. Then, speaking of the result, because we're actually getting closer to me being done with this build, I'm doing all the landscaping and then I'm moving on to the interior. I am extremely proud of this result. It is not a functional build, which almost makes me sad because I would love to play here. I wish that one day we'll actually have functional spiral stairs in the game so that I can actually have spiral stairs from this game going down and I can play here with my sim, because this would be such a cool storyline for like a magical sim. Maybe one day a girl can dream we'll actually have fairies in game and we'll be able to fly up there. I don't know. I'm just putting it out there in the Sims universe. I'm manifesting it for all of us that one day we'll have fairies. I didn't expect that I wanted fairies, but then I made this build and now I'm like, I'm team fairy. Give me fairies in the game so that I can play here and live out my lemon core fairy dreams. This is also the only week where I actually made a sim. I actually made my sim self in a fairy version, and I went into live mode and I took a bunch of screenshots of myself posing. I always like to do that in builds when I really like a build or when I think it's super pretty, but with the builders games, I always feel like it takes a little bit too much time because the build itself already took so much time. But with this one, I was like, no, I really want to do it because I want to see how cute it looks when there's a sim in this whole landscape. So I made myself as a fairy. I made sure to include all of those screenshots at the end as well. My two favorites are by far my sim self walking up the spiral stairs and my sim self picking lemons. There's actually one screenshot where I'm picking lemons exactly at this pergola, and it is such a perfect photo. Like, I was kind of obsessed with how it turned out, so that just made me want to play here even more. And then the part that I think you've all been waiting for, and that is the scoring of this build. So as it was the finals, that's an important moment for this video. So it is my honor to tell all of you that this build actually made us win the finals, and therefore we also got the most points across the entire challenge, which gives me the title of winner of season 6. I am so incredibly proud of what we achieved with the season, and I keep saying we because I genuinely don't think I did this build by myself or any of the builds for this season. I've been taking a lot from inspiration from Twitch chat, people's creativity there and their suggestions. I could have not done this without my Twitch community. So if you're interested in joining my Twitch community, I stream The Sims 3 times a week, so we would absolutely love to have you there. We will do more build challenges for sure, because I love building in The Sims, and I specifically love building on stream. Also, a huge shout out to the Builders Games, to Juby, and to Lina for hosting this, for organizing this, for coming up with all of these challenges. I feel incredibly creatively refreshed, and that's every single time that I join the Builders Games. It hits different. There's nothing else in The Sims that, for me at least, comes close to being able to see other builders work on the same build and having that kind of like community feel of we're all like just inspiring each other. It is literally there. It didn't feel like a competition or like a negative part of the competition at any point. It always feels so enjoyable. We always get to take so much inspiration from each other, and I would absolutely love to join the Builders Games. For anyone who isn't familiar with the Builders Games, follow them on Instagram. Make sure to keep an eye out, because if you're a builder and you would like to challenge yourself creatively, by far my favorite way to do that is the Builders Games at this point. So thank you so much to Juby and Lina for hosting it. I appreciate you guys a ton. They are also phenomenal with giving the feedback every week and like sharing all the judges' insights and stuff. They work so incredibly hard, and they deserve all of the praise and all of the love. Their socials are actually linked in my description box as well, so please make sure to go follow them and share the love with them, because the fact that they're hosting this just for free and just for fun is actually fantastic. If you see this build and you're like, I'm actually really interested in downloading this, maybe potentially playing in it, or just seeing what I did and taking inspiration from it, it is on my gallery. My gallery ID is just Rosannatxt. And if you see this build and you're like, dang, I really want to join this challenge as well, the shell is actually up on Juby's gallery, which is also linked in my description box down below. And if you do end up building this as well, feel free to share it on Twitter and like tag me, because I would absolutely love to see, or on Instagram for that matter, I'd absolutely love to see what you guys do with this. And like I said earlier, keep an eye on the Instagram of the Builders Games or join their Discord to keep an eye out for season 7, because they are already working on it. So there will be a season 7, and I'm super excited for that to come around, whether I can join or whether I can watch other people join and see all of their creations. I am already super stoked. Like always, at the end of the video, there's a bunch of screenshots of this build from a first-person perspective, and including that is also the screenshots of Fairy Ro living her fairy dreams. So feel free to stick around to the end of the video to see those. If you enjoyed this video, please do toss it a cheeky like, because it does really help the video get shown to more people, and I'd love to share this creativity with as many people as we can. And I would love to hear in the comments what your favorite dessert is. Now that we've done an entire season of dessert builds, let me know in the comments down below what your favorite dessert is. And if you like building videos, Sims videos, CC videos, mod videos, anything related to The Sims 4, please feel free to check out my YouTube channel. And if you like what you see, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and notification bell. And with all of that being said, I'll leave you to enjoy the rest of the speed build with some nice music. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye, everyone!